Hello Game Movies community, today we'll be looking at the R9 290X by AMD, and yes, we did manage to get our hands on one of these, so I'd like to thank AMD for providing this unit and also Taddak for their continued support. So this right here is actually an engineering sample. It's not branded with anything in specific, not MSI nor ASUS, it's just an engineering sample, kind of like the reference unit used by AMD. At $550, it's actually $100 cheaper than its closest competition, the GTX 780. And looking at the Titan, it's priced at $999. It's almost double the price. Let's get it out of the bag and take a look at it. It's again the reference unit, so expect other manufacturers to tinker with it, play around with it, and change the fans on it, and do all sorts of crazy things. So the moment of truth is here, the 290X, the reference model. And it looks absolutely sexy. The black and red, as we're used to it. The fan design has changed a bit, but again, it's gonna probably be changed with other units. It's around 2.5 times the size of an HTC One if you compare it. It's very heavy and bulky, but I'm not going to complain since it's going to end up in my case. Let's take a look at the outputs provided with this card. You have 2 DVIs, 1 HDMI and 1 DisplayPort. The HDMI and DisplayPort are full size, but the DVI lacks analog support. Not that really matters since most people use HDMI nowadays, and there's also the grill for heat dissipation in the back. Taking a look at the power connectors, you have one 6-pin power connector and one 8-pin. The card does draw a lot of power. Some reports say that the card has drawn in excess of 250 watts, so that's a lot of power for a single GPU card. But the reference cooling does manage to keep the card from overheating. Of course, we expect the other manufacturers to tinker with the cooling and provide much better cooling, which will allow us to overclock this card. Taking a look at the small switch on the side, it's actually a dual BIOS switch which switches from quiet mode to Uber mode. Quiet mode limits the fan speed to a certain preset and ensures that the clock speeds are reasonable enough for the card not to overheat, while Uber mode kind of ramps up on the fan speed and gives you the maximum amount of performance you want. Also, if you want to overclock, you gotta go to the Uber mode to overclock more easily. AMD has also packed a bunch of technologies into this card. One of them is Mantle. It's an API that kind of competes with OpenGL and DirectX in providing low-level access to the graphics card. This in turn means you'll have more control over the resources on the graphics card when developing games, and that means you can do more with the same amount of hardware you've had, which will be compatible with all the GCN chips from AMD. That means the older generation chips will support the Mantle API, and the 290X of course will have support for the Mantle API. Battlefield 4 has already been confirmed to use Mantle API, so I'm just excited as heck to see how that turns up, because it could be a real big turnaround for gaming if we see a new API that helps developers kind of get the most amount of juice out of the card. Another thing the 290X incorporates is the AMD True Audio, which is hardware processing of sound on the graphics card. So the idea is that the developer will be able to access sound processing on the graphics card, which in turn will allow for better, more immersive sound within the game. And also you would be able to kind of have an emulated surround sound through the graphics card to a 2.1 headset, which kind of sounds promising, but I gotta try it myself. The last thing I want to talk about is the efforts AMD have put into this card to enable higher resolution gaming. And now I'm talking about 4K resolution gaming. And now not a lot of people have 4K monitors or screens yet, but it is future-proofing for your card. Also, if you want to look at Infinity gaming, this is a good option for that, because it does have some significant advantages from the last generation of graphics cards provided by AMD, and it does have sufficient amount of RAM, and the architecture has changed to kind of support higher resolution gaming. But the benchmarks actually show something very interesting. The 290X surpasses the GTX 780 and matches very closely to the Titan, sometimes being a bit faster, sometimes being a bit slower, depending on the application you use, but at half the price, that's just great bang for buck. So that was our first look at the 290X, and I'm just dying to get this card into my new rig, as you can see here. So hopefully we'll be able to get a review sample in the near future and make some new content on this card.